Hello, Leigh here. The election is what feels like moments away, and I, for one, am stressed. However, what Fi and I decided to do to kind of assuage our anxiety is that we are going to host a fun little election night live stream party. So if you would be interested in joining us, it's going to be on our Patreon at 1 a.m. UK time, and that is 8 p.m. East Coast time, 5 p.m. West Coast USA. So we are very excited. We would love to have a little chat, meet some of you on our live stream on Patreon. So do go and check it out on Queer Gals Watch at patreon.com. You can also find all of the details on our social media, which is at Queer Gals Watch. Hopefully we can all kind of huddle together in cyberspace and hold each other through the anxiety. We would love to see you there.
Should we just go into it?
Yeah, we're starting season 2 of Queer Gals Watch the West Wing.
We're here.
We're back. We survived Edinburgh Fringe.
Leigh survived Edinburgh Fringe. We've had quite the summer.
You're married?
Yeah.
You're a married woman?
I'm a civilly partnered woman.
You're a civilly partnered woman.
She's very modern. Yeah. What a whirlwind it's been the last couple of months. And now I can't express how I'm so ready to just slip back into the warm bath that is the West Wing and just relax and just curl up for the winter.
Just truly, well, I would be curling up for the winter if the election wasn't so close.
Shh, don't talk about that. We don't need to talk about that yet.
Also, dear listener, I hope you know that both me and Fi made all of Fi's 110 wedding guests sit through adoring speeches to each other, being like, "You're my best friend." I
would like the record to show that Leigh quoted Jane Austen to me upon her maid of honour speech, and quite frankly, she had the room in tears. In tears. It was everything I wanted and more.
It was a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for a lovely day out.
All it cost me was so much money.
Let's not think about it.
And my mental health.
Let's not think about it.
Here we are.
Let's not think about it.
Leigh, we're into season 2, baby. We can't start crying yet. There's so much more to cry about.
Yes, absolutely.
But we're here. Queer Gals Watch the West Wing. We're back for season 2, and we are kicking off with episode 1, In the Shadow of Two Gunmen.
We finally have the answer to who is down.
Who is down? We've been waiting for months. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm ready. I'm psyched.
I'm psyched. Mandy is nowhere to be seen.
We will have brief moments of pause for Mandy throughout this episode.
Moira Kelly.
Thank
you for your service.
Thank you for your service. We miss you. We wish you well in One Tree Hill. Should we just dive into the episode recap?
Let's dive in.
Okay, awesome. So we're here first and foremost to answer the question, who is down? And I will just start by taking a moment for the gall and the gumption, Leigh, of this episode title. Because Aaron, once again, is giving a very in memoriam energy with In the Shadow of Two Gunmen. It's very war film. It's very we've come a long way from Celestial Navigation with this title.
We've come a long way from Toby and Sam Seaborn's lesbian road trip.
Yes.
Things have escalated. We've stormed the beaches now.
The previously on, it's very Hoynes heavy, Leigh. Which worries me.
It's never a good sign to see Hoynes in the previously on.
No, he's just got bad vibes as an individual. More on him later. So let's just get into the meat of the episode. We open, we're in the motorcade, lights flashing, it's raining, the limo is speeding along the road in DC. Jed is alive. Jed is in the car. He is with Ron.
He's with Ron, who we had such dire predictions for in his first scene. And yet he's had such a future life as a character, and I really appreciate him.
He's stepping into his light and his power in this episode, Leigh, in a big way. I wish well for Ron. So Ron is alive, Jed is alive, and Ron is confirming to Jed that Zoe is alive.
Yes.
So we have confirmation on all those three.
The Bartletts are well.
The Bartletts are well. And then Jed is very concerned about Gina. He's like, is Gina with Zoe? Zoe is apparently throwing up in the limo that she's in.
Which, like, fair enough.
I'm just going to say, like, that would be 100% my response to this as well. Like, I would be unwell with the shock and the trauma.
Definitely. But I love that Jed is not happy unless Gina is also in the car. And it's like, Jed, hun, she's a Secret Service agent protecting the first daughter. I think she can, like, handle herself.
Also,
but
like,
we appreciate the concern.
She has an unbelievable work ethic. Let's not forget that. And she's like, the job isn't finished. Zoe's in the car. She's safe. She's keeping an eye on operations. And I just...
Yeah.
Gina Toscano.
Wow.
I'm so glad that she's with us for season 2.
Wow. She's alive.
She's alive. Be still my beating heart. So Ron is like, we need to get back to the White House.
Yeah.
We need to regroup.
Yeah.
Jed is like, I'm not going back to the White House. Like, he's...
the phrase, I'm not going back to the White House, from a president in a motorcade to a Secret Service agent, has not aged well.
No.
The Cassidy Hutchinsons of it all. Luckily, no one is grabbing each other's clavicles, which is great.
If anything...
It feels like a respectful dispute between Ron and Jed here.
Yes, and it feels like Jed is, a mentally sound person. I will say that Jed Bartlett in Crisis is a truly kind of stunning performance, actually. Some of Martin Sheen's best work happens in this scene. And he plays it so well. Like, he's screaming at Ron, like the lights from the motorcade through the window, like the sweat on his brow. And the score working overtime in this moment.
I think the transition, the development of Jed's character, if you will, from episode 1, where he was very much giving kind of Aslan, to where we find him in season 2, episode 1, is like, Jed is now Brat.
He's very messy now.
He's allowed to be a kind of messy bitch. And I appreciate that in a president, I must say.
It does make him more of a real character. And like also his response when so Ron has been shot in his hand. And Jed's like, well, we need to go to hospital. Like, you've been shot in the hand. And like getting really stressed about that and really stressed about Zoe. It does, like, you can feel the adrenaline coursing through his body. And it is only in that moment, as he's like gesticulating around Leigh, that we see that there is blood coming from Jed's mouth.
All is not well, Fiona.
All is not well.
The score is truly working overtime. There's like a crescendo.
Ron like pulls open Jed's suit jacket and he's been hit.
Jed has been hit.
The president has been shot.
Eagle has been hit.
The eagle is down. The eagle is down. And it's at that moment that we smash into the opening credits. And I just love it when it's like on such a bombshell moment. Yeah. I could eat that for breakfast. But let's go back to the town hall and the aftermath.
Yeah.
And to see who is okay and who is not okay, because we did a lot of chat about this. CJ's alive.
CJ is okay.
Alison Janney's performance, once again, through this episode is flawless. It's just unbelievable.
She's bringing slapstick to an assassination attempt, and I appreciate that.
It is that, but it's also just like, so we find CJ and she's being treated by an EMT, and he's like checking her over, and like she's got like a cut on her head because she was pushed to the ground. And she's playing like shock and like being on the verge of tears. And like you've like fallen and hurt yourself, or like if you've ever been in like a car accident or something and you're like, I think I'm fine. I'm fine. But you're like I suppose like the adrenaline and all the chemicals rushing around your body mean you're like, I'm kind of on the edge of tears. Alison Janney's just like, she just plays that for the whole episode.
Alison Janney is every woman. Do you know what I mean?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Leigh. Yeah.
She just is bringing authenticity and a kind of relatable gal next door energy to like the highest stakes of situations. Yeah. She is all of us.
Yeah. Who is not all of us is Sam Seaborn, who he is alive and well, but also is just looking so fresh. Like,
which I would say like, no, that's not right. And then I'm like, no, that is absolutely right for Sam Seaborn's character. Like, not a scratch on him.
Like, not a crumpled suit, like clean collar, his tie still impeccable. Just him being like, are you okay, CJ? And I'm like, what?
Where were you?
What have you been doing, Sam? Did you just like pop out for coffee?
He like went to grab a latte.
Yeah.
And then comes back and it's like, what happened here? I was gone 10 minutes.
Things escalated. What we should say is a moment for just the production as a whole on this episode.
The extras really showed up to work on the day of this scene was filmed. They really showed up. They're really bringing the chaos and the emotional truth of that kind of like aftermath panic.
Yeah.
And I can do nothing but commend them, Fi.
Now, the thing is that we expect nothing less from a John Wells production. Just like your main guy, your main producer, John Wells, he's also a producer for ER. And if we're talking about like supporting actors and like background actors, there's just no better person to go to. Like the way in which these scenes are put together is flawless. We will get to the hospital in time. But yeah, it's a visual delight.
Truly.
That's all I say on it. Don't push me for further comment. So we see Gina. Gina is alive and well. She's working the room. She is touching base with the people who have come in, who are like the profilers, who are trying to find this like third man, the one that she saw, the young neo-Nazi she saw in the crowd. We know nothing more at this point than just the young neo-Nazi she saw in the crowd.
What an interesting casting day that must have been.
I'm reading for young neo-Nazi. Fingers crossed. But she is holding it together. She's very stressed. And she is immediately blaming herself. Now, Leigh, is she in fact every woman?
I believe that Gina Toscano is a Virgo.
No further thoughts?
At the very least, she is an earth sign.
Yeah, for sure.
The kind of like flawless work ethic and ambitious drive, but the absolute inability to cope with anything going wrong on her watch. It's big Virgo energy.
Yeah, and as a fellow Virgo, I really align myself. I literally put in my notes, this is very us in the workplace.
She doesn't quite have the same kind of self-importance and grandeur that my own people, the Capricorns, would have.
No, agreed. I would say CJ's giving Capricorn energy.
Like
hey, fish boy.
Like we're looking flawless at all times, but it's like a swan with the little feet are going the whole time.
100%. So we see Toby. Toby is alive and well. Thank God.
Thank the Lord Jesus.
Rattled, but giving a fine performance.
Truly. And of course, his emotional response to not knowing where Josh is and trying to find Josh immediately brought me to tears. We're not even 5 minutes into the episode.
Not even 5 minutes in. It's just him being like, wandering discombobulated through like a crowd, being like, Josh? I was like, oh God.
You know what it's giving is the opening of Anastasia when she's trying to run away from the Russian Revolution with her grandmother. And then her grandmother gets on the train.
Yes.
And Anastasia is left behind.
Toby is
the glamorous grandmother. and Josh Lyman is Anastasia. Is the princess Anastasia.
Is the only surviving princess.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I also am going to go home and watch Anastasia now.
I'm not going to.
Charlie is alive. Thank God. He's also just helping people in the crowd, Leigh.
Yeah.
Like he didn't need to, he could go home now. Like he could have got in one of the like motorcade cars.
With his girlfriend.
With his girlfriend or his boss.
Yeah.
But he's just like, I'm going to help some people. They don't deserve Charlie.
That underlying sense of civic duty that he has inherited from his mother.
Oh my God, yeah. More on this later because some Charlie backstory is coming as we go forward, and gird your loins, Leigh.
Yeah.
And stay hydrated because it's an emotional roller coaster. Let's go back to Toby looking for Josh.
We did not even consider that it might be Josh who was down.
We didn't even think about it.
He was never on our list.
So Toby's like going through the crowd. He sees Josh like sat leant against something and is like, Josh. And then as he goes up to Josh, he says, Josh, didn't you hear me shouting for him? At which point I did what you're doing right now. I just started sobbing because Josh has been shot. Josh is down bad.
Did I or did I not say that I feel so guilty? I was like, I want season 2 to be the great humbling of Josh Lyman.
What we didn't...
He's immediately been in like mortal peril.
We were like, yeah, I want something to happen to him that really makes him like take stock in his life and like come back to his senses because he's like so full of bravado. What we didn't ask for him was for him to have a near-death experience and like lifelong trauma. But in many ways, we've been heard.
Oh my God. It's like so Band of Brothers.
It's any time where a man is cradling another man and that man's like, I got hit. Unfortunately, I'm gone. Because I'm a sucker for that in a big way.
It's very Ben Affleck cradling Josh Hartnett in Pearl Harbor and saying, you're going to be a daddy.
Oh, it's just some solid film references coming from you, Leigh, straight out the gate.
Oh,
the emotions are flowing.
and she's back in the room.
Okay, we're to the ER.
Please. To the red fucking phone.
This is the ER crossover moment that we needed. This is what I've been asking for from moment one. If we were in Chicago rather than in Virginia or DC, I would be expecting a full crossover episode. I would be expecting Dr. John Carter to be coming out to the motorcade and being like, Mr. President, my name's Dr. John Carter and I'm going to save your life.
Is that George Clooney?
That's not George Clooney. That's like I would say that like the male lead who like kind of goes through the whole show.
Fine.
Second longest running character in the show. Anyway, if that had happened, I would have had to take to my bed. I would have potentially just combusted.
Yeah.
It's my two favourite shows in one space. However, I will say that we had an amazing piece of trivia sent in to us by one of our lovely listeners.
Yes, a shout out to Christian. Yeah, Christian has been sending us spoiler-free trivia for every episode, like a sum up of all of the spoiler-free trivia. And I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I love it. And then, of course, I looked on Christian's email signature and I was like, of course, Christian is a first AD. It all makes sense. The level of detail.
We would expect nothing less from them. Yeah. But what Christian said to us was that actually all the hospital scenes in this episode are filmed on the set of ER.
So good.
And once I read that and I was watching it back, I was like, I could see corridors I recognised, but it was like they'd just chosen to like frame it from different angles. And I was like, it looks completely different, but here we are. Anyway, stunning. And actually later in the episode, Leigh, when we are in some of the flashback sections, spoiler, those scenes were filmed on a close personal show of yours, Gilmore Girls.
It is none other
than fucking Stars Hollow.
Yeah. Jed Bartlett is campaigning in Stars Hollow. Who knew? Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah, and I would like the listeners to know that I have in fact done a walking tour of the Gilmore Girls set. And
it hurts my soul that you've done that and I haven't.
We can go.
Let's go.
We can go.
Girls trip.
Girls trip.
You've not got a wedding to pay for anymore, honey.
No, I'm gonna go to America. I'm gonna go to Hollywood. So, we're in the ER. It feels like it's a kind of slow night. We've got our chief nurse. And she's like, oh, it's awful quiet. The phone rings. She reaches over. She picks up the phone. She's like, hello? The phone keeps ringing. Because it wasn't that phone, Leigh. It wasn't
the red phone.
It's the fucking red phone. And you can just see her whole like nervous system being like, fuck. She picks up the red phone and she's like, and they like say the code words. And she's like, look, if this is a training exercise, like I've got a bunch of kids here with alcohol poisoning, like I do not have time for this tonight. And they were like,
is down.
They're like, we're here right now, like, fuck, let's fucking go. And in that moment, there's like the flash of the blue lights from the motorcade, like come across her face. And there's an entire tonal shift. And it is just
lovely day's work from this actor. Lovely day's work.
I hope she went home, sat down, like had a glass of something and was just like, I did good today. Because she told a story.
Yeah.
Again, a day player just absolutely giving it socks.
Yeah.
We love to see it. Meanwhile, at the White House, So go back to our good friend Hoynes.
Who is, of course, doing yet another impromptu press conference.
Why?
I just love that every time we find him, he's just giving an impromptu press conference.
About something super crazy. And I'm sure a lot of this is just them feeding back generally about what a VP has to do.
Yeah.
But he is doing an impromptu press conference to a college women's basketball team. No shade on them, because I think they've sort of won some sort of championship.
Yeah.
And he's they've handed him a jersey. So he's got a Hoynes jersey. And then in a classic kind of embarrassing man way, he's when I was at college, I used to share a dorm with an Olympian and we used to shoot hoops together. And it's just embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, hun, you've got places to be.
Yeah. However, there is one zinger from this horrible press conference, which is stunning, which is what Hoynes says about this Olympian, which is, he sent that ball back at me like I talked about his sister.
It's great.
And honestly, I'm taking that into my vernacular.
Yeah.
Because that is a stunning way to be he fucking schooled me.
Yeah. It's good.
Now, what we're maybe having in this episode, Leigh, is in fact the great humbling of Vice President Hoynes. Because as soon as the Secret Service smash through those doors and are Vice President, he looks like he shits his pants.
I love that choice from that actor.
It's so good.
That he's not actually ready. And he looks scared. And I love that.
And they manhandle him out because obviously they're you potentially might now be president. So we need to get you to safety immediately.
Yeah.
It is so sensational that Hoynes just gives it socks all the time. But when it comes down to it, this is what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Is that the only way that you would come into power is because of an awful crisis.
Yeah.
And he is just not ready.
No.
Sensational. To Dr. Abby Bartlett.
To Dr. Abby Bartlett, I love the choice that she's striding through the halls. She's not even untucked her hair from her coat. She's just thrown it on. The collar is popped. It's very glam.
It's very glam. But I just feel everyone went on the filming break between seasons. And in my head, everyone's getting paper scripts posted to them, couriered to them. Is that everyone sat down at home. What a time.
Lovely.
Flick through.
Lovely.
And I just imagine that Stockard sat down in some sort of gorgeous chair at her very glamorous house.
I imagine in a silk pajama.
Yeah, in a robe. And just flicked through and was yes.
Yes, that is correct.
That is correct. Abby Bartlett, full doctor mode, full mother instincts as well. But just there's just a lot of people fucking striding down corridors and getting in and out of cars and just giving flawless dialogue.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the hospital, check in on Jed. He has arrived. And what we're getting here is that, again, this wonderful mashup between what we know and love with the West Wing walk and talks, which are that really pithy dialogue, quite a lot of kind of jokiness. But then also cut in on top of that, the ER style, which is constant medical terminology. And the two things are layered so deliciously, which is that the medical team are just doing a scene from ER.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're also at the same time filming a scene from the West Wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just I honestly was just hunched up like a little goblin on the sofa, just
like a little chihuahua.
Yeah, literally like an excited chihuahua, just tongue hanging out. For example, a sensational West Wing quote being from Bartlett saying, "If I don't speak to my daughter in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to attack someone."
So good.
Which is so good. He literally has quite a serious abdominal gunshot wound. But he's I need someone to physically present me my daughter.
Yeah.
Once again, confirmation that, he might be president of the United States, Leigh. But at the end of the day, he's just a dad.
He's just a sassy dad.
He's just a sassy dad who has one favourite daughter and an unnumbered amount of other children.
I believe we do find out.
Potentially this episode, yeah.
Yeah.
Next episode, I can't remember. But yeah, still we remain seeking justice
for the other Bartlett daughters.
Also, we love that Jed is just worried about Ron.
Yeah, he's concerned about Ron.
This guy's got about 7 broken bones in his hand if someone wants to give him an aspirin or something. Wisecracking, time after time after time.
You know what? There is actually quite a storied history of US presidents giving quite pithy responses to getting shot, which we may get into at some stage. Stunning.
What I love is this is quite a chaotic scene. They're kind of getting Jed into the trauma room and stuff. And then we cut to like sleepy late night White House and like all of the EAs like tidying up business for the day.
Yeah.
And just like Mrs. Landingham like packing up her little like bag and stuff. And like Margaret like with her armful of like files.
Just on Margaret's first appearance of season 2, several people have pointed out to us that we had a kind of backstory for Margaret, that she was like the mother of like
a teen son.
And it has been pointed out to us that the actor who plays Margaret was 26 when season 1 was filmed. I can only apologise. I will say that the gravitas that Margaret was bringing was beyond her years. And also, I think
the styling. She was being styled.
She was kind of separate from the rest of the EAs as well, in a way
like
that
she
made
was
it
in a
feel
different
like,
generation.
Yes, but obviously glowing, stunning, beautiful, many appalls.
Yeah, we are so sorry. However, I do still kind of love our narrative.
Yeah, but just maybe that son
is like 6.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and then she could have been like she had him at like 19.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, is this going to ruin your life? And now she like, works for the chief of staff at the White House. Yes, I love that for Margaret. Thank you. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So, to the calm of the White House, Mrs. Landingham and Margaret.
Mrs. Landingham does not know.
None of them know. Until Margaret's like, Mrs. Landingham, look at the TV. And then they both just leave.
Full body shivers. Full body shivers.
Mrs. Landingham looks at the TV screen and it's like, an incident is unfolding in Virginia. And then like it cuts, like it kind of pans across to Margaret's face. And then it just pans back to where Mrs. Landingham should be. And you just see her running down the corridor. Like she's going to him. She's going to Jed. Because she's not just his secretary, she's also his friend.
Why is Mrs. Landingham running so emotional?
I shouldn't be so emotional when an old woman runs. Older woman, I'm so sorry. But like, there was something about the fact that it was only shot from behind and it was just her like scurrying away in her little like red skirt suit.
Because like the chicks, she is ready to run.
She is. I would also like the record to state that whilst I typed up notes about this, I cried just remembering Mrs. Landingham running. In her little red twin set.
Bringing the fashion as always.
The fashion hand in hand with the drama, as always with Mrs. Landingham. Dolores, please. Okay. We'll go back to Jed in the hospital. Zoe is now in the room. And like Jed just like can't stop wisecracking. Like every line is a zinger. At one point he like makes fun of Zoe for throwing up after someone had just tried to kill her.
She booted all over the back of the car. You know they're going to bill me for that.
Stunning. I will like mention another zinger, which is when they're talking about Abby joining them. Jed's just like, tell her not to frighten the doctors, which I love.
And we're like wisecracking, we're bantering. And then I was just not prepared for the moment with Leo. He pulls Leo in close to him and kisses him on the cheek.
So the exchange goes, Jed pulls him in and just says to Leo, it's okay. He then kisses him on the cheek. And then Leo just says, I'll see you in a few hours, Mr. President. They love each other so much. It's just a tender little kiss on the cheek, Leigh. Which is
toxic masculinity who? I'm sorry. Two like boomer men in touch with their feelings and their love for each other.
Showing that love through a tender kiss?
2000?
Through a tender kiss?
Just a platonic kiss on the cheek between guy pals.
Again. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. And then we get the image I've been so excited for so long, which is Stockard and Zoe in the same frame.
Yep. What we asked for, but perhaps not in the context we were hoping for.
No,
perhaps not. Abby Bartlett is just being really hot. She's a hot doctor.
She is.
She just like comes in, like she knows her husband's life in danger, but like slaying the performance, just like all the medical speak, all the other doctors like deferring to her, which makes me think that like when she was full-time doctoring, she was like shit hot at like something in particular, in her specialism, like wrote lots of medical journal entries and stuff. So What we're going to discuss very briefly is a scene between Abby Bartlett and Dr. Leigh, who is the anesthesiologist.
Yes.
Stockard Channing is going to tell Dr. Leigh that Jed Bartlett has MS because that is pertinent to, I'm assuming, the amount of medication that he's going to need and also his like being then brought out of being under anesthetic. So she's like pulls him into this room and she's like, there are 14 people in the world who know this. When this is over, tell the press. Don't tell the press. It's entirely up to you. And then she just leaves.
She doesn't give a shit, Fee. She
like,
does not give a shit.
She's like, save my husband.
Just save my husband and then do what you will.
Yeah. And if you want to go to the press, I hope that you feel fucking bad about it. Because he's...
Now, the 14 people.
Yes. So who do we think the 14 people are, Leigh?
So the givens are Abby herself, Leo, we saw last season, Hoynes, she says, Fitzwallace, she says, Jed's normal doctor, so that's 5.
That's 5. Then I'm going to say like Zoe.
Do you think Zoe knows?
I think the daughters would know.
So that's 3. That gives us 8.
Do you think perhaps Jenny knew?
Well, but Leo only found out last season, which was after him and Jenny broke up.
Yeah. Or do you think perhaps he has a consultant and so maybe that's 9. So we've still potentially got like 5 more people. I wonder if does Jed have a sister?
We might be counting like Morris.
Morris would have known because he was very much like, take your pills, sir.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Morris.
And
forever in our hearts and our thoughts.
I wonder if there's like a Bartlett sibling.
I think there's a Bartlett sibling. I see him having like 2 sisters.
Yeah. I would love to meet a Bartlett sibling at some point.
I would love for him to have 2 older sisters who are like closer in age, and then there's quite a big age gap before him.
And he's the baby boy. I see that, like golden boy.
Then they're like, oh little Jeddy gets what he wants.
Yeah.
And like made him dress up and stuff.
Cherished only son.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I would like to put a light onto a moment between Gina and Leo, going back to our Virgo energy, which is Gina's just like in the hospital. And she's like kind of, you can see that she's going over in her head like everything that she did and like hyperanalyzing it again. Gina, I see you, I feel you, we are one.
Because ultimately, like anytime that somebody there's like multiple checkpoints that someone's going to have to get through to be able to even like aim a gun at somebody. So
she feels like at some point I messed up.
Yeah.
The fact that the gun got discharged in the first place means that I failed at my job.
Exactly, yes.
And she's saying to Leo, like, the profiler that came in that was like, give us a description of the man you saw. She was like, I can't remember what I saw. Like, it was a guy, he was wearing a cap. He was white, he was roughly this height. I can't even tell them what colour the cap was.
Yeah.
And Leo just like puts his hand on her arm and he says, you got the girl in the car, Gina.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the Leo I've missed.
Yes.
We haven't seen him for so long.
Yeah.
The one that's like, I can see you spiraling.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you one fact about the job that you do.
Yeah.
And that's it. Take what you want. I'm not going to stand here for 10 minutes and tell you did an amazing job today. I'm just going to say, Zoe's safe.
Yeah.
And that's why you were hired to do this job.
Yeah.
So I would love to see a bit more of that Leo McGarry back.
Absolutely.
Because I think we lost him a little bit at the end of last season. I think the stress was getting to him.
Agreed.
But no time to linger on that moment, Leigh, because Josh has arrived in the ER and it's safe to say he's in a bad way.
Sam just shouts, Josh, I'm here. I can't cry again.
So I think this is going back to, so when we did our we did our town hall at the end of last season and we did like our Q&A episode, we got a question in from a listener that was like, oh, how do you feel about Josh and Sam's relationship?
Their backstory. And we didn't know. And we're literally getting it season 2, episode 1.
So now I feel like we can properly respond to that question, which is, I feel so good about it.
I feel so good about it.
I feel so excited to talk about it. So Josh is like hallucinating, like clearly he's in a really bad way.
Yeah.
Sam's like, I'm here, buddy. Honestly, there's just a love between friends at every angle in this episode. It's just a constant.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh is like, I gotta get to New Hampshire. And Sam just says, you made it to New Hampshire. We both did. You came and you got me. What does this mean? And why is this so emotional? And with that, Josh loses consciousness. And we like wavy line into backstory, into some stunning moments. First fact, Josh did work for Hoynes.
We were correct.
But let's not forget that he was discontented when he worked for Hoynes.
I don't even know what we stand for.
I don't know what we're for. I don't even know what we're against. And I think this is the problem with Hoynes.
He's an empty shirt, Fee.
Yes, he is. A lovely broad-shouldered shirt, but an empty one nonetheless.
Dare I say, like a little someone called JD Vance? Dare I say?
Don't mention the devil's name in vain. Which is that I don't think Hoynes is for anything. I think he's for becoming president.
Yeah. He thinks basically having the rough demographic makeup that would make him a suitable casting for James Bond means that he should be allowed to be president.
Oh, you have nailed that 1,000. Like, that is just exactly it. It's like, well, I'm attractive and like I can talk to women
I work
men.
out.
I work out. I am reasonably healthy and I'm intelligent. I went to a good university. I should be president.
Yeah.
But what we do get in this backstory is just like Leah McGarry just like sidling up to Josh and being like, hey, Josh, how's your dad? Me and him are good pals. How's things going with your dad?
Of course, Josh is a Nepo baby. It all makes sense. It really reads for him, that like slight chip on the shoulder of like, could I have got here on my own? Or is it all because of my dad?
It's very that. And also kind of like the slight distance in relationship between him and Leo, which is always like,
I can never get past the fact that I'm your friend's son.
Yeah. Or like, do I remind you of a young him? Or am I
your friend in my own right?
Yeah. Or am I paling in comparison to what my dad would have done in this job?
Are we standing in the shadow of a gunman, or are we standing in the shadow of Josh's dad?
These are the important questions, Leigh. Also, backstory, Leo has like a little twinkle in his eye and like a little like kind of naughty disposition, like a kind of like a mischievous character in like a Christmas film. But he's clearly trying to poach Josh. So he's like, I want you to come and hear Jed Bartlett speak in New Hampshire. I think he's got some things that are going to like, you're really going to like. And Josh is like, okay. He then calls his EA Janet. So we are in
We're in a pre-Donna universe.
Yeah, pre-Donna era. Which actually makes their friendship a reasonably new one.
Yes.
Which I didn't see. I kind of saw them as people who had been working together for some time.
But actually, it kind of, in my mind, intensifies the flirtatious energy if they've gained that level of closeness that quickly.
And what will Donna's friends have to say about that intense burst of compatibility with her boss? We will get onto this in further backstory moments. But to Sam Seaborn's flashback. Now, Sam's previous era... The previous Sam Seaborn
is a different person.
A different man altogether. And Leigh and I were both fully gagged. Like, I was speechless.
Of course, Sam Seaborn is a man in the midst of his Saturn return breakup.
Yes, it all makes sense. Like, everything happening with Laurie, everything that's happening with Mallory is all down to the fact that, like, we are with a man who has changed his life entirely in the last 18 months.
It makes complete sense. And
he has moved cities.
Yes.
He has changed jobs. He has left a fiance.
We don't know where the fiance is. We don't know what happened to the fiance.
We just know that her name is Lisa, and Josh did not like her.
No, he did not. He did not like her. And I will say, as someone who spent most of my 20s nursing various lesbians back to health after broken engagements, at Slash, you know, the girlfriend they'd spent the whole of their 20s with, the number of lesbians, dear listener, that I was their first date after a huge... I was like, of course, again, I'm their first date.
It became a trend for some time, and we were...
For quite some time. And I have to say, people coming out of their huge, big, Mr. Big style breakup are absolute chaos.
Yeah.
They don't know what they want. They don't know who they are. They're like eat, pray, loving without even realizing that they are eat, pray, loving.
Suddenly, like, my understanding of Sam Seaborn has like broken open, and I may get some hate for this, but I think I love Sam Seaborn. I think I want him to be my friend.
I think that Sam Seaborn, I now understand him.
Yes, because I think sometimes you do need your origin story. I mean, for example, he was working in New York for like a big law firm doing like litigation for oil companies. And you can just tell that he hates his job.
And he hates himself in that job.
Yeah. So in the scene, Josh comes and like meets Sam at work when Sam's doing this like really soulless work.
The way that Sam's face lights up when his EA is like, this guy called Josh Lyman is here. And Sam is like, really? Josh? Here?
And then he's like, hey, let's go get a hot dog. And they go into the streets.
He just leaves this really important meeting. He like goes out to get a glass of water and like just doesn't come back.
Which I kind of low-key love from him, like his chaotic energy. But yeah, he's in New York. He's doing this job he doesn't like. You can tell he's probably like paying through the teeth for an apartment he doesn't even want. He's with Lisa, who he's like, I should marry her. And I guess I am excited about marrying her. But like, it's all screaming like grad scheme girl. It's screaming like, I left uni and I got like pulled into this like incremental like experience of life. I think I'm living the life that I'm like everyone else wants me to live.
I've been like sleepwalking through my 20s.
And suddenly here I am and Josh Lyman's like, you should come to New Hampshire with me and hear this guy speak. And Sam's response is, Lisa and I are getting married in September. I physically honked like a goose because I was so gagged. Imagine if you told me that you got engaged and my response was just, oh, okay. Because that's how Josh responds. He hates Lisa.
He hates Lisa.
Or he knows that Lisa hates him. Or it's a mutual hate.
Or he like is privy to information
about
that
Lisa.
Sam is not privy to.
Before Bartlett, Sam Seaborn was a fucking different person.
Yeah.
Anyway, Josh is like, I'm going to go to New Hampshire. I'm going to go and see this guy, Jed Bartlett, speak. And Sam says like, if he's the real deal, come back and tell me. And then as Josh, again, this is like classic, you noted this down in the shed, Dot. This is like classic Aaron Sorkin, which is like, as they're walking away from each other, Sam like calls back and stops Josh. And like they turn and there's like this distance between them in the street. And Sam's like, Josh, what are you doing? And Josh is like, I don't know.
I guess I'm just following my heart.
We just like, what I noted there was like, there was a vulnerability in that scene, that whole little section of backstory between Sam and Josh that we don't see in their friendship anymore. And we didn't see at the start of season 1. There was a lot of like, don't we look good in these suits? There wasn't like the two guys who I feel like we're at law school together. I feel like that's how they know each other.
Yeah.
Or maybe they like interned at the same firm. But like there's like a historic friendship there.
It feels like those friends that like you have from certain jobs, and I feel like I have from like drama school, where you're like, we were in the trenches together.
It's that. There's shared law.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's flash back to present day. So, news from the front. Jed is going to be okay.
Yeah.
He's like in surgery. It hasn't hit any like organs or anything. Like essentially got like entry wound, exit wound.
Yeah.
He's gonna be fine. Josh, however, the bullet has hit his pulmonary artery, which is like incredibly, incredibly serious. Like life-threatening. Like he's going to be in surgery for like 14 hours.
Yeah. The little hug also between Zoe and CJ when Stockard comes in and says that Jed is going to be okay. I love the kind of budding, fun auntie, older sister relationship between Zoe and CJ. Like CJ is just like the woman 10 years older than you that everyone deserves in their life.
And that you're like, I really want to ask them how they feel about this thing. Because like, I need her, like, I really want her advice. And I hope at some point in this season we see like Zoe like go to CJ and be like, can you help me with this thing with Charlie? Like, I don't know how to talk to him about this.
Yeah.
Like, help me know how to like talk to my boyfriend.
We're going back to the sit room now, and I did just want to mention that we had a listener reach out to say that the actor who played Fitzy passed away this week.
Oh.
And so just a moment of in memoriam
for Admiral Percy Fitzwallace.
Admiral Percy Fitzwallace, John Amos, who began his acting career in 1970 on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. What an icon.
What an icon. Oh, here's to him.
Yeah, we should absolutely like have a drink in his memory.
Yeah.
This eve.
We will do that. Well, it seems fitting that we're in a scene that is in the sit room. And also kind of in like a very glam way that Fitzwallace is not in the scene because he's in Manila. Obviously like doing important business.
Yeah, on business, yeah.
But like, I just love that they're like, Fitzwallace isn't here. He's in Manila. And I'm like...
They're turning the plane around.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay. But what we do get is a new character alert.
Finally, there is a woman in the sit room, Fi.
Nancy.
Nancy, who immediately I love.
What is Nancy's first line, Leigh?
Nancy's first line is, can someone send over some clothes from my office? I look like an idiot.
Which means that I love her.
When she says I look like an idiot, she's like in the most glamorous, like cocktail attire.
She's wearing like kind of like goldy silk cocktail dress and like little short sleeve like bolero jacket. Like she's obviously been at an event and she's like, I need to get a fucking suit on to like get my head in the game. Hoynes is in there.
Hoynes comes in and the military like don't immediately stand for him.
Which is like, because obviously there's this whole thing in this episode and in the following episode around Article 28.
So that is what we are going to cover today in our little study session.
Oh, cool.
The 25th Amendment is what's being discussed.
So it's like, basically, the military don't stand, and then there's like a thing of being like, no, like, Ten Hut, like, you need to stand up. And Hoynes is like, no, you don't need to stand. And it's all about this 25th Amendment, which is like, who is in charge right now?
Who is the acting president?
Because the president
is under general anesthetic and is therefore incapacitated.
So technically, something should have been signed that means that like Hoynes is now in charge and can make decisions.
That Hoynes has the powers of the presidency.
And therefore the military should stand. But I just love that it's such a fucking slight to him that they just didn't even stand up. But what is interesting from Nancy's point of view that she brings back up is that we're only 13 hours on from that plane getting shot down in Iraq, which we did at the end of season 1. So like in Nancy's mind, she's like, this is a clear link.
Yeah.
Between what happened there and us like rescuing that pilot and this act of terrorism upon the president. And everyone looks to Hoynes like, what's your take, sir? And he chokes.
Has he been reading his foreign policy briefings? Maybe not.
He's been too busy jogging and chatting to female basketball players.
Maybe he's not been reading his national security briefings. Oh, what a shame.
I just love that like he fully chokes and he just looks at Leo like, help me.
Yeah.
And Leo's like, you've got to say it. I'm not going to say it. And then Hoynes is like, I think we're going to follow Leo for a moment. You better help yourself to a big old spoonful of that humble pie, Hoynes, because that was embarrassing.
Yeah.
I loved it. Okay, let's flip back to the hospital. And Leigh, hold on to your hat.
Yeah.
Because we're in the family room. We're getting an update from the doctor who is working on Josh. Enter Donna.
Donna does not know that Josh is down. She thinks she's there for Jed.
She thinks she's there for the president. And she's like, oh my God, as soon as I heard, I like rushed over. And CJ's like, oh, the president's going to be fine. And the way that Donna's like whole body relaxes and she's like, oh my God, thank God. That's when everyone's like,
who's going to tell her? And that's when I realized that everyone else knows she's in love with Josh.
And like,
because nobody wants to be the one to tell her. And it's so much more of a marked moment than it would be just like, oh, we need to tell her that her boss is the one who's like vaguely injured.
Because there's like a shared look between...
Gravely injured, sorry.
Everyone in that room.
Nobody wants to... And of course, it's Toby who steps up to the plate.
He tells her. And I would just like to say, Janelle Maloney's performance in that moment is stunning.
In my mind, it's like we've gone in from season 1 to season 2 with Janelle Maloney already. It's like we've gone from like, oh, like cute rom-com actress to like, no, Janelle Maloney is like a fully blown, in her power, dramatic actress.
100%. And you mentioned in this, like the hair, makeup and costuming of her in this scene
is so believable as like, this is just what I was wearing on my evening and I've just like rushed in.
Like I've put a coat over. Yeah. Like my hair's just like in a ponytail. Like she's not wearing a shred of makeup. Toby's like, Josh got hit. And her line is just, hit with what? And then they have to explain it to her. And she just like puts her hand over her mouth and like the shivers.
It's such an understated performance.
It's beautiful. Okay. CJ's doing a press briefing. She 100% has quite a heavy concussion.
Yeah.
Like she's very discombobulated through this. And like she's not on her game. And she keeps on like touching her neck. There's this like thing, she's like, I've lost my necklace. But what keeps on being like thrown at her, especially by Danny, and also a shout out to a new character played by the actor Jane Lynch.
Yes.
Just joining us in the press corps. I hope to see more of her. I'm a big fan. Love her. But like, they're all asking about the 25th Amendment. especially Danny. He's like, technically, right now, who's in charge? And she's like, well, a lot of people are in charge. And he's like, no, legally, like one person. Who's the president? So just some foreshadowing for the next few eps there.
Yeah.
But also, what's the significance of the necklace? Like, she doesn't stop going on about the necklace. Like, who gave her that necklace? Is it from the Claudia Jean archives of her previous life? Like, oh, I gave back my engagement ring, but the one thing I kept was the necklace he gave me on my 18th birthday.
Fee, please, I can't handle more emotional material. Why are you adding to it?
Let's go back to Nancy.
Yeah.
So she wants to go to DEF CON 4. You asked, what is DEF CON? And actually, DEF CON is from many disaster films and war films that I have watched, because I'm a sad, lonely woman. It's like defense readiness condition is what it stands for. And it's on a scale of 1 to 5. And actually 1 is the most severe. So like we're like, America's on 5 and she wants to push it to 4. But the idea is that when you change what DEF CON level you're at, that will have like international significance, because other governments will then be like, why are you doing that? And then there's lots of chatter. So I think we don't want to do that, because we don't know what we're working with yet. But Nancy's very convinced that it's connected to the plane being shot down in Iraq. The problem is that Jed never signed the memo before he went under anesthesia. So like, actually, we don't want to make any decisions because technically no one has the power to make those decisions. So locally, it's very stressful in the sit room.
Yeah.
Quick moment of conjecture for Ginger coming into work. Toby's having a little timeout moment in his office, and Ginger just like is a bit tearful.
Yeah.
And then like Toby just gives her a hug and just says, it's okay. And then like they like come out of the hug and he just says like, you ready to get to work? And she like nods and then just goes off to her desk.
And gentlemen, might I just say, that is how you, in a very platonic, professional manner, deal with a woman being emotional in the workplace.
Thank you.
She at no point was not respected.
Nope.
She at no point was patronized. She at no point was sexualized. It was just a very platonic, respectful, professional moment.
Little check-in moment. Just a PSA from Toby Ziegler.
Yeah.
And then a seamless transition into Toby backstory. Toby is just drinking in like a small town dive bar with a random woman.
Yeah.
It's a crackers scene.
I just feel like
he's smoking
so
a
nailed.
cigar and like drinking whiskey. And she's like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm like a political analyst or whatever. And she's like, are you good at it? And he's like, yeah, I'm really good at it. And she's like, oh, what have you won? And he's like, nothing. And I'm going to get fired. So I'm just drunk in the day.
We so nailed the backstory with Josh and Sam. And then this Toby scene is just like, could we not have given him a little bit more? Like, this just feels absolutely crackers.
Yeah, like we're very much playing that like Toby is just like flailing professionally. But we do meet Baby Bartlett. We meet Governor Bartlett.
He's either currently governor or he's like a past governor.
And so where we are is we're in New Hampshire with Bartlett.
Yes.
And he's like doing like a kind of not open mic.
Just Jed doing a tight five.
But like he's doing like a kind of Q&A like town hall meeting thing in this like
a campaign event.
A campaign event. And it's just like a lot of weird elderly people like eating chicken and no one's really listening to him. And he's talking in depth about economics.
Yeah, let's skip over that. But I do love Toby, Leo and Jed in their kind of business casual attire.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see them kind of with the shirt sleeves rolled up.
It's very cash. And the thing that like happens in this scene, you see Josh, he's in a chair like at the back of the hall. He's like reading the newspaper. Like he's kind of not really impressed. And then there's a particular question that comes up. That like there's been a lot of back and forth with Toby and some of the other political team who I guess are on Jed's campaign team, which is like, how is he going to respond to this dairy farmers thing? Which is about like taxation on milk, basically, simplest terms. And this farmer stands up and is like, you lost me money by supporting the vote to implement this tax. And Jed just goes, yeah, I screwed you on that one. I screwed you. You got hosed. And I love that, like, the thing that gets everyone on board with Bartlett, the thing that like kind of reignites Toby's fire, and the thing that makes like Josh Lyman put down his newspaper and sit up is this amazing little speech that Jed does, which is about like, look, I'm really sorry that I voted for that and that you lost money. But the thing is like the like greatest number of citizens living in our country in poverty are children. And the thing is I just didn't want to make it more difficult for their parents to buy milk for them. And I was like, that as like a core, like political, like that as like Jed's backbone is like the reason why I'm running for president. The things that I stand for are things like that. I was like, I vote for him.
Yeah.
I would vote for him.
A slow clap moment for Josh as he realizes that he loves Jed.
He literally like stands up from his chair and like slow claps, and like his face is just like, wow, he's so clever. And then we have this amazing debrief moment after this town hall where Leo just fires everyone except Toby.
Love it. He's also like fires everyone except Toby with his like leg up on a chair.
Just like, and he's just like, he doesn't fucking give a shit, man.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Toby is having like a full Britney moment sat backwards on a chair.
Yeah, he's like ready to do some choreo. He's also like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of drunk. And I'm like, how are you keeping your job, man? You need to get your shit together. Another fun fact that came from Christian that they like pointed out to us in their notes, and actually I was like, this is stunning, is that one of the people who's on Jed's team is a character called Cal, who then works for Hoynes. So he was the one that was rude to CJ. So he swapped sides.
I love it.
He could have worked for the president, ended up with the vice, chip on his shoulder. Stunning moment with the firing where Leo just says, fellas, look at my face, you're done. And I think that's the classiest way anyone could get fired.
Yeah.
It's just be like, look at my face. Like, I'm not going to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Just go. What a bait and switch. We're closing out this moment in flashback between Jed and Leo with them just like walking through Stars Hollow. They're actually like further up that road is where Luke's diner is.
Yeah.
It's on the corner. Not that that matters or like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing that I know that, but whatever. Also love the idea that like Jed and Abby just like live in Stars Hollow.
It would read for me.
Yeah, yeah. And basically Jed's upset because he's like, what's going on with this campaign? You keep on firing everyone. I knew those guys. I don't know Toby Ziegler. And Leo's just like twinkle in his eye. Little mischievous character being
it's
like...
It's very kind of Glinda the Good Witch.
It's very that. Being like, don't worry, like, trust me. Trust me. And like, he's like giving it lots of zingers and being like, well, what a political accomplishment considering your family founded this state. Just like, he's just reading Jed for filth.
Yeah.
And basically, Leo has this little speech.
Yeah.
Where which is amazing. And I'm going to read it out.
Yeah.
When Jed's like, what's the point? Like, they're just like, why would I ever get elected? Like, why are you bothering to put this energy behind me? Like, I'm just another like fucking like New Hampshire liberal. What's the point? And Leo says, because I'm tired of it. Year after year after year after year, having to choose between the lesser of who cares. Trying to get myself excited about a candidate that can just speak in entire, complete sentences. Of setting the bar so low that I can hardly look at it. They say a good man can't get elected president. Well, I don't believe in that. Do you?
Oh, Leo, the bar has so much further to fall.
It is stressful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that ends that flashback moment. But I do think that we needed that origin story of like why Leo is like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this campaign work and I'm going to make this administration work.
Yeah.
And also the love that he has for Jed.
Yes.
And the faith in him. And we come back to present day, to the hospital. Jed Bartlett now in his little dressing gown, getting himself out of bed too soon to go and see Josh.
Yeah.
And like Mrs. Landingham's there and Donna.
Just Mrs. Landingham and Donna.
Like sat next to each other.
Having a woman-to-woman moment in the waiting room.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Landingham just like holding Donna's hand.
Yeah.
Because Mrs. Landingham knows.
She knows.
She saw a few of the girls back in the day fall in love with their boss.
She's seen it before.
She's seen it all before.
Yeah.
No words need to be exchanged.
No need to be embarrassed, honey. It happens to a lot of people. And that's it. That's the end of the first episode.
Into the quick fires.
Yes. First things first. Not a mention of Mandy at any point in that episode.
Not hide nor hair. And given that Josh is like gravely injured and the whole introduction of her character was based around the fact that her and Josh had this like really fiery ex connection.
Nothing.
You'd think she'd be rushing to the hospital.
You'd think that she would be at the White House helping CJ. No. I think we're just never going to hear about Mandy again.
I do just believe that Moira Kelly deserved to be written out. If they were going to lose her as a character, I don't know why she's just like faded into the distance.
I think she needs to be like, oh, I'm really glad that Mandy took that position at such and such. Even if we don't give her the scene, like we need to just reference her.
Yeah.
Anyway, best fashionly.
I'm going to go ahead and say Ginger's like pale blue polo neck and camel coat that she came rushing into the office in the midst of the crisis.
For the Ziegler hug.
We've never seen her in her casual wear before and just wow. It was a wow moment for me. And also so believable as like I was just relaxing in this at home.
And I've just come into work.
And I've just thrown my coat on.
Yeah. I would say that my honourable mentions, because I agree, are just the costuming of Donna. And then me crying watching Dolores Landingham run in her red twin set.
Yep, absolutely.
What could a British or Irish politician just never get away with?
Yeah, I screwed you on that one. I screwed you. You got hosed.
Yeah, no, we can't. There's an inability to just be like, yes, I was wrong in this country. And also, if you say you're wrong, then my God, will we just ruin your life?
Yeah.
We will just take it to the cleaners.
Yeah, I mean, all Ed Miliband did was eat a sandwich.
Yeah, and we ruined
his... all went wrong.
And we ruined his life.
Yeah.
So how long until like our big ticket items, guns, abortion, free speech, religion, etc. came up? I feel like we were like getting our teeth into the topic of like internal versus external terrorism.
Yeah.
Which I think might perhaps be like quite a strong thread in this season.
Yeah.
And obviously like tied up within that is like race and religion.
And we very much have the Chekhov's gun of like quite literally of gun control from what episode 2, 3 going off in season 2, episode 1.
Which I think is like very valid because it seems like gun violence and like gun legislation is such a big and can be quite like a divisive issue in America. I'm so surprised that this TV show is talking about it so openly all the time. It's actually very impressive. And like for like the year 2001.
Yeah.
So we've come up with a new section in our quickfires.
This was a listener request.
Yeah.
Was they wanted a new quickfire, which is best writerly moment, which I love.
Yeah, which is just sort of like the most like little moment of like, that was good. They had a moment in the writer's room where someone went, that line's great.
What a zinger.
You did good on that one.
Which is Josh to Sam Seaborn when Sam is talking about litigation for oil companies and that being kind of his life's purpose. And Josh replies, I can't believe no one ever wrote a folk song about that.
Which is just stunning.
It's so good.
It's so good.
I'm going to bring it into my day today.
Yeah, when people are like, here's this thing that's like actually really important to me and it's really dull. Like, wow, I can't believe that Shania Twain never like wrote a real pop banger about that. Man, I feel like a manly.
He sent that ball back into my face like I talked about his sister.
Yeah, that's stunning for me. That's really good. For me, I enjoyed Fellas, Look at My Face. You're done. From Leo. And what was the moment that made you proudest to be an American citizen, Leigh?
Leo to the sit room at large.
Yes.
Saying that what he wants his message to be that the international terrorists receive is, don't mess with us tonight.
Yeah. And then like I just think that just was delivered with such gravitas.
Such panache.
Because it's quite camp.
Yeah, in the hands of a lesser actor, that could have been a real like eye roll moment.
It could have been like it's giving, I'm going to blast them off the face of this earth with like the fury of 1,000 suns or whatever.
I'm going to blast them off the face of this earth with the fury of God's own thunder.
That's the one. That's the one. Beautiful. And just like him and Jed are cut from the same cloth at the end of the day. I think honourable mention to the score.
Truly, the score really was doing some heavy lifting in this episode.
The score was giving patriotism.
It really was.
In a big way. That's me, Leigh. I had a lovely time. I know I really banged on about most stuff there, but I just feel like we had so much like intense stuff to unpack in terms.
Truly. So much lore was dropped.
So teach me.
So obviously in this episode, there's a huge amount of discussion about like the 25th Amendment.
Yes.
And like who is in charge in this situation where the president is down. He's under anesthetic. He's not able to make any calls. He can't lead the country.
Yeah.
Now, prior to the 25th Amendment, presidential succession procedures did exist, but they were quite vague on the technicalities and they didn't really cover every scenario because the original Constitution didn't state who had the power to declare the president unfit to serve.
That is a big question.
It's a big question. The VP always was the first in line to the presidency if the president died or resigned in office, which did actually happen quite a lot in the history before the 25th Amendment. But it was not clear what would happen if the president, as in this episode, is like temporarily incapacitated. That all changed. The reason that the 25th Amendment kind of came about is because in 1963, President JFK was, of course, assassinated. And no one was clear in the kind of chaos of that day whether Lyndon B. Johnson, the vice president, had also been hit.
Oh, okay.
Because LBJ was in the same motorcade like 3 cars back.
Yeah.
Now, Johnson was sworn in as president later that day on Air Force One.
That's very glam.
What a movie moment.
Yeah.
And that kind of did immediately kind of reassure the shocked nation. Basically then, 4 years later, we get the 25th Amendment that really kind of like clears up exactly what happens in that situation so that in a moment of national crisis like that, it's not quite as chaotic.
We're not like going back to like the law texts and
Exactly.
being like, oh God, we need like a few hours in a room
Yeah.
with all these books to like work out what we're supposed to be doing. We can
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
crack on with.
And President Ford called the 25th Amendment's ratification in 1967. He said it ended our long national nightmare about the rules of presidential succession. And President Ford did have his own kind of special relationship with that, as we will come to see. So Section 1 of the 25th Amendment states, in case of the removal of the president from office or his death or resignation, the vice president shall become president, as we know. Section 3 states, whenever the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the vice president as acting president.
Okay.
So what that says is, in order for the powers of the presidency to be transferred to the vice president as acting president, as it was mentioned in this episode, the president has to give a written notice to the Senate president pro tempore and to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now, obviously, in this case of Bartlett going into emergency surgery
When was
for
that
a
the moment to
gunshot
do that?
wound, he wasn't exactly in a place where he was going to be able to like do paperwork, which they mention in this episode. They're like, oh, so he needed to like sign something? Because that feels like there just was never going to be time for that in a situation where the president is shot.
And I think like it felt very much like when we were in the hospital, it was like everyone was focusing on like the human side of it, which is like, is Jed going to be okay?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, he's the president, what's the situation here? I think everyone was just like, I guess like Hoynes can just like cover our backs whilst he's under anesthesia and then we'll see where we're at.
Now, there have been several cases since the ratification of the 25th Amendment where presidents have done that. They've given written notice to the Senate President pro tempore and the Speaker of the House. President Ronald Reagan did it to voluntarily transfer to his vice president while he was in the hospital for cancer surgery. And President George W. Bush did the same thing when he was sedated during routine colonoscopies. The 25th Amendment also gives the president the power to appoint a new vice president mid-term if that role should become vacant. Because when LBJ took over the presidency from President Kennedy, he had to serve out the rest of President Kennedy's term with no vice president.
Oh, so you can't like sub someone in?
You couldn't before. That's why they needed the 25th Amendment.
Okay, cool. Because that's great. Then that's crazy because then what if he was killed? You'd have to call like an emergency election?
Exactly. So this is the problem that the 25th Amendment was trying to solve, was that there was no recourse for a VP stepping up into the presidency because the president has resigned or passed away. There was no recourse for him to then choose a new vice president. So it basically made it that the president can appoint a new vice president, and subject to congressional approval, that person can then step up into the vice presidential role. So yeah, up until 1967, in the case of a vice presidential vacancy, that role would just remain empty until the next general election, which feels wildly dangerous.
Also, it just feels like a very lonely position to be in as a president, to be like existing with no safety net. Like, I know that that's not, but also like there are some important jobs that the vice president does.
Yeah, and as you say, if something then happens to you as president, you're kind of in a bad place.
Yeah, up shit creek without a paddle.
Truly. Before 1967, the role of vice president was vacant 16 times due to deaths, resignations, or assumptions to the presidency. And the 25th Amendment was first used in October 1973 when President Richard Nixon nominated Gerald Ford to replace Vice President Spiro Agnew, who we spoke about before, who resigned as vice president when he was being criminally prosecuted.
Yeah.
So that was good. And it was also very important that happened because the Saturday Night Massacre happened during Ford's nomination process.
Oh my God.
So we're like in the midst of Watergate at the same time.
It's so interesting when you're like, because like at school, often you learn about like historical moments like on their own, right? So you'll be like, oh yes, like I can write an essay about the Watergate scandal. But then it's when you contextually put everything in at the same time, you're like, so this was happening alongside this. And like, this would have still been being processed. Like, as I learned a little bit more about how long it takes for things to happen, like after an event. So like, oh, this event happened. They needed to change, like respond to the Constitution in this way by making this like amendment. Like that could be like 2 years before that thing happens. Yeah.
Yeah, so
context is everything.
Yeah. So it was kind of clear when Gerald Ford was being nominated to replace Spiro Agnew as vice president that President Nixon was gonna have to resign. Like it was clear that was he was either going to be pushed or he was going to jump out, resigning out of the presidency kind of thing. And Nixon aide Alexander Haig commented, Ford was treated throughout the ceremony and afterwards as president in waiting, especially by Republicans. And there can be quite little question that Richard Nixon's presidency was over in their minds from the moment his successor took the oath.
To be a fly on the wall in the White House at that time.
And
like the whispering in corridors and like...
And President Nixon didn't want Gerald Ford. He had 4 options for replacement VPs, and he wanted John Connolly. Ronald Reagan was actually also on the list of potential replacements. But basically, Nixon's staff informally polled Congress, and they wanted Gerald Ford. And so Gerald Ford was the one that ended up being nominated.
That's so interesting.
So basically, in a very short space of time, we go from President Nixon with Vice President Spiro Agnew to President Nixon, VP Gerald Ford, to President Ford.
Sometimes when we talk about this stuff, I'm like, it makes so much sense that like the generations above us are so like fucking stressed and burnt out.
They're so tired.
They're so tired. And also why potentially they're responding slightly less to all the stuff that's happening in politics. Now they're like, this is no like year where we had all of these changes.
Yeah. Some other times that things like this have happened. President William Henry Harrison died in office in 1841, and his VP, President Tyler, stepped up into the presidency. But in 1844, he was almost killed in a shipboard accident when President Tyler was stopped by a dignitary on his way up to a deck to witness a naval gun display on the USS Princeton, and the gun exploded, killing the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the Navy instead. But if that dignitary hadn't stopped President Tyler on his way up to the deck, President Tyler would have also been killed, and the VP was the vice presidency was vacant.
You know what? Back then it was very hard to stay alive, wasn't it?
It truly, I mean...
It's like a lot of like exploding guns, like people like, oh, then their carriage fell into a swamp.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, you just got consumption.
Yeah.
You went on a boat and you were on a boat for like 4 months, and then when you got back you had some sort of like strange fever and just died. Like,
truly. Or there's the case of when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865, part of the plot was also to kill
the VP,
his vice president, Andrew Johnson. But John Wilkes Booth had persuaded somebody to be on that job. And he was actually like on the roof of the hotel where Andrew Johnson was staying, like ready to kill him.
But then he bailed.
He bailed and decided to go drinking instead.
Oh my God, love that like really toxic energy from that guy who's like, yeah, no, I'll definitely do that murder for you.
I mean...
No, you can count on me, like, I'll murder him. And then they're like, fuck it, I think I'm just going to go for like a fucking cocktail.
Yes. He was still hanged for his role in the conspiracy.
Do you know, fair.
But yeah, had Andrew Johnson also been assassinated, then the president pro tempore of the Senate at the time, Lafayette S. Foster,
oh, what a name,
would have become president.
Which is what Booth wanted. Or just Booth wanted to be like, sack off the president.
John Wilkes Booth was a white nationalist.
Oh, I see why he had issue.
Yeah. There was a lot going on. It was kind of civil war. It was crazy.
Yeah. I love that, like your dissertation about it, just with the with just the byline. It was civil war. It was crazy.
There was also the election of 1876 was a very contentious race. The Democratic candidate Samuel Tilden had won the popular vote, but there was a dispute about whether the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes had actually won the Electoral College.
Let's not go into
so
things
stressful.
Like that.
So Congress appointed a commission, including several Supreme Court justices, to decide who'd won the Electoral College. They only decided 2 days before the inauguration.
Wow.
Ruling in favor of the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes. And so had they not decided in time for the inauguration, again, the Senate pro tempore, Thomas W. Ferry, would have become the acting president until
they decided.
Until they decided who the president-elect was. It's also historically possible that Thomas W. Ferry, the Senate pro tempore, actually believed he was acting president for a day because he was not aware that Hayes took the presidential oath of office in private.
Again, like, what a crazy time to be like a fly on the wall with just like lots of men striding around in like big coats and hats being like, who's in charge?
Truly. I mean, it's like genuinely, it's like such an actual question.
Yeah.
Of like, we don't actually know who's in charge.
I feel like this is really helpful because it is putting into like slightly more like sharp relief the energy in the sit room in that episode.
Yes.
Because I was like, wow, like, especially when Leo's like, no, I want to do this, like we're going to do this, and people are like, everyone's like exchanging like looks at each other because they're like, well, you can't make that decision.
Truly.
Because it's like, actually, Leo doesn't actually have any power to make any of those decisions. Yeah. And so now I feel very stressed about the fallout of all of this.
Yes.
Because actually, Jed couldn't make any decisions. No one signed a memo. He didn't sign a memo. Hoynes didn't decide anything. Yeah. Actually, it was kind of just Leo. Like, technically, is that like a coup? We're in a grey area.
Similarly, in 1919, President Woodrow Wilson had a massive stroke while he was president. After a series of smaller strokes and ignoring warning signs of various neurological problems.
Yes.
And he never fully recovered from that massive stroke while he was in the presidency. And his cabinet suggested that his vice president take over. But his wife, Edith, and his doctor conspired to keep his condition secret from Congress and the public.
Edith, what are you doing?
Crazy behavior from Edith.
Like, how is that benefiting her? Like, is she just like, oh my God, I couldn't bear like not to be the first lady? Like, maybe just for a bit, like your husband's just have a massive stroke.
Yeah. Now, Eisenhower, after suffering a heart attack and again a mild stroke, did actually write a confidential letter to his vice president, Richard Nixon, instructing him what to do if he was incapacitated.
We love someone who's prepared.
He's prepared. He was aware that he was fallible.
Yeah.
And so Nixon did actually become acting president under Eisenhower after that heart attack in 1955 and when he had a surgery in 1956. We just love a man with a plan.
It's just great when people write stuff down. A handover. What we love, Leigh.
We love a handover.
We love a detailed handover. Just someone sharing, the access code, like email sign-ins, postcodes, etc. Just like anything helpful.
The other thing that the 25th Amendment does is the vice president, together with a majority of Congress, can invoke the 25th Amendment to suspend the president from office if they deem that president to be unfit to serve.
But the grey area being what does unfit to serve stand for?
And also you have to get obviously a majority, the vice president would have to get a majority of the Congress to agree with the assessment that the president is unfit to serve. Now, this is section 4 of the 25th Amendment.
Okay.
It has never been used.
Okay. I bet some people have wanted to use it.
The Reagan administration was close.
Right.
Several White House aides felt that President Reagan was inattentive and inept.
Oh, that's damning, isn't it? That's not a good review.
Yes. Howard H. Baker Jr. had just started as Reagan's chief of staff in 1987, and he asked 2 aides to investigate how the Iran-Contra scandal was affecting the White House. And one of the aides that was tasked with this, James Cannon, reported back that the White House was in chaos. The West Wing was in chaos. He wrote a memo sent to the chief of staff and raised the prospect of invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Ronald Reagan from office. Baker ultimately decided not to invoke the 25th Amendment, but it is a rare case where White House staff have suggested removing the president based on his inability to do the job.
See, that's so interesting. I wonder at various points, perhaps let's say over the last 8 years, those conversations have happened very quietly and very privately in the White House.
Well, Cannon recalled later, and I'll let you draw whatever parallels you might like. He recalled later, Reagan was lazy. He wasn't interested in the job. They said he wouldn't read the papers they gave him, even short position papers and documents. They said he wouldn't come over to work. All he wanted to do was watch movies and television at the residence. And ever since Reagan revealed that he had Alzheimer's disease in 1994, people have speculated about whether that disease began while he was still president. Stephen F. Knott, who's a professor of national security affairs at the United States Naval War College, said, I'll just say right off the bat that I'm not of the school of thought that believes Reagan was suffering from mental health issues. I don't see mental illness, nor do I see Alzheimer's. But he does say, after the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan in 1981, that the president, quote, came closer to dying than we were led to believe at the time.
Ooh.
And that was an instance where the 25th Amendment should have been invoked.
And it wasn't.
But it wasn't, out of fear of upsetting the public, the markets, along with allies and adversaries. So I think the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan must be quite a big inspiration for this episode.
This was some trivia actually that Christian sent us as well, that they were talking about the fact that there's like some of the, like the scene between Ron and Jed in the car and like not knowing that Jed was hit and then like the blood from his mouth apparently was pulled from like testimony to do with the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan.
And in a couple of episodes' time, I'm going to dive maybe slightly more into the political impact of assassination attempts on various US presidencies.
I look forward to that.
But that is a conversation for perchance season 2, episode 3.
Perhaps.
But I will close just by saying that there were actually public discussions of invoking the 25th Amendment after President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis.
Yes.
Because several people, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, introduced legislation based on the 25th Amendment that would have created a commission to review the president's fitness for office. Because there were several people saying that he was actually too sick
to be able to like do anything.
To be a decision maker, basically. Yeah. And in the hours after January 6th, there were also bipartisan calls in Congress, as well as discussions by cabinet members about invoking the 25th Amendment.
Very interesting.
Yes.
What a fascinating lesson. Because I feel like this is something that keeps on kind of popping up in the West Wing, which makes sense because it's very dramatically interesting, which is like a lot of like the Constitution has expanded and grown and been amended over the years. And they talk about it a little bit in the episode. They're like, it's kind of unclear. And then this bit, there's like this section, but like that doesn't really say whether or not this thing.
Yeah.
So like the kind of knottiness of like the actual laws of like how we're supposed to do our job in crisis is so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, as they point out in this episode, it is kind of crazy that the president is expected to basically produce paperwork in order for his powers to be transferred over to the vice president, when, like, I just feel like it's unrealistic that situations are not going to come up where the president isn't capable of doing, like, you know, an emergency surgery needs to happen. It needs to happen now.
And, like, yes, Jed was cracking wise and, like, throwing zingers left, right, centre, but, like, he could have just been unconscious.
Yeah. And so I think in my mind, there should be something that's automatically triggered when the president is not conscious.
Yeah. There's got to be something about, like, actually, like, being under, and, like, maybe that means that, like, some things need to be, like, co-signed by people, like, supported by. We're not lawmakers, Leigh.
Anyway, I think the history of the 25th Amendment is really fascinating.
Yeah. It's juicy. Mm-hmm. I feel enlightened.
I'm so happy we're back for season 2.
Me too. I've had such a good time.
Yeah. And thank you, dear listeners, for joining us back for season 2 and for indulging us in our little break between season 1 and season 2 so that we could get married. Well, civilly partnered.
Thank you. Please, yes, civilly partnered.
She's a very cosmopolitan woman.
I am. Yeah, and that, you know, you could go off and have your working gal summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to be back, and I'm really excited for season 2, and I'm really excited for all of you lot out there to come with us on this crazy journey back into Bartlett's administration.
Some might say, on a journey to the past.
More of that next week, I think.
Yeah.
Should we meet up again next week?
Let's
do
all
over
it.
Again?
Yeah.
If you do want to be in touch with us, you can follow us on all of the socials.
At Queer Gals Watch or queergalswatch@gmail.com. We love hearing from you.
We really do. It means so much, like, when you send us messages. We love that.
We love that. And also, if you have any questions about any of the topics that kind of come up in the next few episodes that you would like us to dive into in a kind of study session, any kind of stupid questions about American politics that you'd like me to chat about, we would love to answer any stupid questions that are not stupid questions.
Because the likelihood is that I have thought about them and have been too embarrassed to ask them. So please do it on my behalf. Yeah.
Bye, honeys.
Bye-bye. I'll see you next time.